And that was the healing that I needed for me. And this is when I say all the time to you, we have the same dad, but we have different experiences with the man. And you have to know that as a mother, even watching or with your children, they may have the same dad, but they have different experiences. And what God knows that I need to heal and the experiences that I need to have with him to be able to heal and to grow from my pain or my trauma, God knows what I need. Mm-hmm. Just like he knew that you got to stay in that building with your grandfather and seeing all this different stuff. He knew exactly what you need. And this is why you can't compare any of that. But I will say, thank God that both of us in our own way and right is able to climb our own mountain and take up our own steps and to be able to do what we need to do to be able to address some of those things. And so I'm just glad that I didn't get to the peak of that mountain and you say, baby, nothing that you said happened, and that you were in denial, and that you were, a lack of forgiveness, or you were making excuses for your choices. You didn't do any of that.
Hey there, I'm Ari, your petite but powerful Kingdom Teaching professor and entrepreneur. I bring the sass, the laughs, and the serious, let's get real and heal moments without any filters. Now meet my mom, Pastor D, the #1 dunamis woman leading our Healing for My Soul movement. As a Kingdom Teaching pastor and life coach, she is unapologetically real, raw, and radical, but she's our rock and the voice of wisdom that we all need. And then there's Allison, fierce yet tender, and the voice for many single mothers. She's the silent heartbeat of our family and will be the first to tell you, yeah, life with these two can be crazy, but I got their back and we're in this together. As a dynamic trio, we spearhead the Healing for My Soul movement, sharing the miraculous healing power of God through our journey, truths, and a little humor as we guide women to pursue healing as a lifestyle so they may experience freedom within their life and legacy.
Welcome back to another episode here at the Healing for My Soul podcast. We're just really excited that you guys have been on this journey with us. We pray that you've been getting so much out of this journey for your own self, for your own life, for your own relationships. And I know, you guys have heard my personal story and my journey to healing, Allison's journey to healing. And part of the core ingredient in both of our stories that you guys have learned a little bit was our dad and the situations and the things that we have dealt with based upon our dad. And earlier we were talking about daddy issues versus daddy trauma. And I still believe that sometimes you could experience some things from a traumatic standpoint as it relates to your father, which could affect your life, your relationships, your healing journey with other men. And so I think that it's important to bring not only my own dad, our dad, to the podcast, but be able to sit here as a family and as his daughters to talk about, our own daddy trauma and the things that have happened within our life. So introduce yourself to everyone because you're new. They don't know. They know us, not you.
Hi, my name is Horace, and I'm Ariel and Allison's father. I'm here.
Yeah.
To tell the truth.
Well, people always kept saying, like, in the first season, like, where's, their dad? Like, let me hear their perspective. And I think people are so used to dads no longer being in the picture or not being in anyone's life. And so they always feel like, oh, well, they're just, talking about something that, the father never hears. And that's not the reality for our story. Like, you are in our life, there's nothing that will come, from our life. But you're here, and we're here at this podcast because I remember you and I had that conversation, which even led up to being here, where I believe you saw a post on social media about how I was talking about how mothers cause division, or division can take place in siblings. And I was like, mothers, be mindful of how you compare your siblings and how, sibling comparison can make there seem like it's a division from a young age. And so in one of the lines I had said, even our father, divided us. And I think that maybe took you back by surprise or offended you in some type of way.
Well, it didn't take me back by surprise. What surprised me was that you said it, and you said it like so confidently, like I caused division between you two, when all I know from when you guys were little girls, it's always just you two. Because if anything happened to me and your mother, it would just be you two. Nothing should come between you. So for me to hear that from you after all the years of this, I was trying to instill that in both of you. It was a surprise, you know, and I didn't want it to be like people would think that I caused you two to be divided.
Yeah, yeah.
Because one thing that you all really should know, and it is really true, both of you are miracle children. Miracle children, and you're blessed by God. And for me to hear division when that was coming, it was something that just set me back.
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to know where it came from.
Yeah, but I was personally thankful that it happened because privately, I was already on a place where I was teaching our class, Understand Your Purpose. And I think a couple weeks prior to that, we were praying for our fathers. And these are women who are not my age. I mean, they're 40, 50, 60, years old. And, we were praying at 5 a.m. in the morning based upon the father, whether those who knew their father, those who lived with their father, those who did not live with their father, if those who didn't even know their father existed in the earth. And I was telling them as their teacher and the professor about how God is always going to grow me up and develop me in a greater level to be able to teach you all to a greater magnitude. And I said, I don't know what this class is going to do for me, but I do know that in teaching you all, I got to be the first partaker. And so I was already privately going through my own personal things as it relates to you and daddy trauma and praying, for you as I'm leading and I'm guiding them. And so when we had that altercation, when you brought it up, and I was like, look, I'm 34 years old. There is nothing in my life that I'm going to basically like sugarcoat, because at the end of the day, we're here to help women heal, and I'm going to be able to speak my truth. And so I was a little hostile, maybe, with you on the phone. And I had to work through my own stuff to even get on the phone, right? Because I knew that you probably felt some type of way about it. I had another meeting I had to go into, and I was like, okay, you got 5 minutes, right? And I probably didn't expect me to react that way. Me and my dad were having a misunderstanding as it relates to, I think, a post that he saw on social media, which I mentioned in it about how he caused division between me and my sister. And so I think that shocked him to want to know in what way did he necessarily cause division. And my response was just kind of more of it was a how could you not, right? The moment that you guys get divorced is division, right? I just couldn't understand. So I think it caused us to just have some misunderstanding from my perspective from a daughter and his perspective from a father. But it was necessary, I think, to bring us to this point because it was like, there's nothing I'm not going to not discuss. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I think that's what led us here. And I had already wrote you the letter.
I hadn't gotten it yet, but yeah.
Yeah. I think I sent it.
I got it, but I didn't get it when I talked to her.
No, he didn't get it when I talked to you, but I knew the letter was coming in the mail to you after we had that altercation. And so I believe sometimes people will separate and step back when you have altercations when it comes to people. But I think at the end of the day, it drew us closer because you did get the letter after that. And I can't remember in totality what the letter said.
Well, I will admit, when we had that altercation, it did take me back. Mm-hmm. And it took me back to a point where you're talking daddy issues and so forth. It took me back to the point where I felt a rejection that I grew up with, mm-hmm. From my parents, mm-hmm. And from my brothers and sisters. So it was like, why would she feel that way? Why would she say that after all that I've done to love her? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it took me back, and I'll admit it did. But when you came and we talked, and I read the letter, I said, oh, okay, that's where it's coming from. I understand why. It ain't gonna take away the hurt, because that's my little girl that did that. But you explained to me what it is that you were going through and what you had to go through. And yes, I do admit, I do look at you all as still my little girls. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You always will be. That's not going to change. Because number one, first, I'm a father. And I do believe in the covenant of a father's covering. Mm-hmm. I believe that until I say, here is my daughter, you take her hand in marriage, I still am the covering. I answer to God for you all. And I'm going to believe that and take it to my grave, because I'll do it for my granddaughters as well. I'm the covering.
Yeah.
Even with things with what you are going through, I would like for you to tell me, but I know that you can't a lot of times because you're grown women, you know. So I just look at you and watch you as you grow and as you do and as you become, and say, okay, God, I see, and I want this to be the way that it is, you know, because they are still my little girls.
Yeah.
You know, but you're growing up, and I got to let you go because I need to move on and let you all become who God wants you to be.
Yeah.
It wasn't really hurt towards me. I didn't feel hurt when I first heard the comment. I just wanted an explanation. And that's all I wanted, you know, because that was, you know, if there's something that should be, you know, can you explain to me? Can we talk about it? Whatever. But then when it went to hurt, that's when I was surprised. And that's when I became hurt, because I didn't understand. Because you have to understand my daughter, Ariel. She is very succinct, and she's very direct, and she's got it honest. Because just like I tell her, you have the same attitude that my mother had, that I had. We can talk direct, and we can talk direct to a person, and we don't mean to cut, but our words will cut. And it sounds like you've been cut, and you've been hurt, and you've been cussed out, and you haven't been, because we're using regular English, and it's just the way that it's coming out. And it's not meant to hurt, but because of our directness, that's what it is. And when I got it from her, it was like looking in the mirror, you know. And I understood a lot of things that were said to me previously, that I didn't know was really happening. But it hurt, but I'm glad we had the talk and we got over it, because I understand her more than she ever thought that I did.
Yeah. So. And I think the thing is that when you're dealing with daddy trauma, it causes you to have triggers. Two things. I think, for one, daddy trauma, you naturally react off a lot of the triggers that trauma has necessarily caused. And then two, when you deal with daddy trauma, it makes things so much bigger in your head. The trauma that you've experienced is so much bigger in your mind, in your head, that you can't really come down to sit at the reality. And so for me, writing the letter and never really talking to you about how I necessarily felt that you all saw on the podcast, and even yourself and your perspective, you know, our stepdad was processing those things with me for the first time that I didn't really see. And in my mind, this trauma was so big and it was causing so much triggers. When you said, you know, and we were on the phone, you said, well, have I ever hurt you? And I remember when you said that, you was like, what have I ever done to hurt you? And I was like, are you serious? Like, are you serious? And so my mind was like, how do you not realize the trauma that you have caused to necessarily hurt? But I'm just coming from a daughter's perspective. And I think many women have dealt with so much trauma in their life that it kind of, you know, when you said that, it was like, how do you mean you've never, like, what parent has never hurt a child?
Hey, you all, I know you've been enjoying these episodes. I know you've been enjoying this podcast. So what I need you to do, I need you to like, I need you to comment, and most of all, I need you to subscribe. That is going to keep you connected with us. That's going to keep me connected with you. That's going to keep us on the same Healing for My Soul movement. Remember, like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, and subscribe. Well, enough of that. Let's get it going, and let's get back to this episode.
Well, let me talk about that, because we did talk about that. Mm-hmm. We did talk about it. And I could talk about the both of you. I mean, we could wait for the, you know, but your trauma, what you explained to me, was something that happened when you were in sixth grade. I had an issue. I had my own issue. And this is something that you all didn't really, because I guess my bad part is I shielded you all from my issues. I didn't let you all see my point, my issues, because you all didn't, but I tried to protect you to make sure that you had everything that you need and everything that you wanted. I did not realize, and I thought maybe the first issue was when I separated you all was when Allison went to live with mommy. Okay, for that point. But you have to remember, that was not my choice. That was something that Allison did to cause that to happen. And Allison accepted that because there was something that happened in her life that she had to do that. You at that point, and that's why when I question you, like, well, what did I do? Because I remember those times that I watched you walk out the door the first time going to the bus stop, and I'd be behind you. And after the first week, you're like, Daddy, look, I can do it myself. I don't need you to do it for me. Okay, fine, I'll let you go. And that's part of you growing up, I'll let you go. And I remember you coming home, and I remember you, we're making, do you want a snack? Do you want to eat before you have your homework? And we sit and watch TV before you even do that. So I remember those times. So I'm looking at all those things where, you're protected from my issues that were going on, and hoping that you didn't see what was going on with me, and helping you to feel protected and shielded from that.
Yeah.
I did not know how much that certain event when we lost a house, that it hurt you. I did not realize that put you back or set you so far back. But even during that time, I tried to tell you, because there was a certain desire that you had, and I saw you, and I saw who you were and what you could become. And I was trying to gently tell you the environment that you were in was not conducive to your growth. But as a child, I know you didn't understand that. But as a parent, as somebody that's looking at you and I see the world for what it is, that was not the right soil for you to be in, for you to grow, to be to become who you were to be. And I will admit that maybe I should have shielded you all from my issues, because you did not need to know that I was embarking upon a place where I could not come back from. Okay. And, you think about something, but I hear you saying some things like, well, I dealt with issues, sweetheart, and maybe I should have told you years ago. I've dealt with suicide since I was 8 years old. Every time it would come up, a rejection, it would come up to a thing of, maybe this is a time that I can get out. But I can't do it myself, because God says, for a man to take his life. To me, that's always been there, that I would not recover from that enough to say, God, I'm sorry. So even then, even the trauma that I went in, when I went into an area where I thought that I could minister to people who were drug addicts. I really did. I felt that call. And I felt that that's something that could have been done. Me and certain friends, we talked about it. The issue here, I became trapped. I became trapped. And instead of dealing with an issue that had occurred that would take my life, I said, number one, maybe if I just kept doing drugs, because everybody looks at a black man and say, oh, okay, he just fell into the trap of drugs and so forth. And so now he's dead. But one thing it is that I did, I want to make sure that you all were always okay. Always okay.
Knowing that my father has had suicidal thoughts since he was 8, that was new news. I did not know that at all. Because I always knew that he was the resilient, successful one amongst his siblings. So for me, that was shocking, but then at the same time, it was helping me understand more of me and the things that I necessarily dealt with as well. So it was not news that anyone wants to hear, but it was news when you hear coming from a paternal, like, okay, now I see why I deal with certain things.
And that's the thing, hearing you speak, because it's not, I look at it as, in order to minister to the people, you had to go through it. Because how can you minister to people and not saying you can't, but and not understand what they go through? And it's a lot of people, parents, who, like you said, have dealt with alcoholism, drugs, and all that, and they still, because even during my desolate times, you know, having Genesis, and one thing, and I know even, like you say, me leaving Genesis, and when I did all that, it was more so, you know, what made me come home was her. You know, clubbing and all that. So, you know, honestly, seeing your strength to even talk about it is to me,
Yeah.
it helps me as a parent.
And it maybe, but I just want to let you all know one thing. I see you, and I see you. I see you, and I know who you are, and I know what your pain is, Allison. You had to go through what you had to go through. And if it was an issue about dad not being around or so forth, I get it, because at the point of time it is that I was taken out of active out of you all's life, it was at such a point where you all needed me. But you know what you all had? Y'all had a strong, strong mother. And I knew that she would not let anything happen to you all. Now, maybe it might have been too much to put on her at that point in time, but I knew that you all would be okay. There are some things like I heard that I didn't say to you all beforehand, like all the stuff I dealt with. You especially. I've dealt with suicide thoughts. I've dealt with it to the point where I've even called people and said, okay, this time it's going to happen. Okay? And God pulled me back from it. Because like I said, one thing about everything is that everything that I do it with in mind of who God is in my life. Ariel, for you, for one, for sure, I did not want you to ever think that I was never there. I was always there. I wanted to protect you from what I knew would happen if you stayed where you were. Maybe I should have held you by the hand and walked you through it, but I don't know if you would have made it through it. Yeah. Because I look at you now and what you went through, where you were, where you went to, and what you went through there, the things it is that you achieved because of who you were and where the spot that you were in could have made it happen. Allison, your trauma, your joy. I mean, you had issues, but you had issues with mama. You had issues with daddy. You had issues with all kinds of things. Your issue number one, daddy, I know you're there for me, but mommy's not. Mommy is there for you. She loves you. Just because and this is where it came from, where I knew just because your mother does not show you the way it is that you want it to be shown, doesn't mean she doesn't love you. See, I had to learn that when I was growing up. I had to learn that from my mother when I was growing up, that just because she didn't show me the way it is that I want to be shown, doesn't mean that she didn't care for me. Ariel, I don't know what to tell you. You are a high achiever. You are a high achiever, and you know you want things the way it is that they want. But I cannot protect you from the fact that the more you want to achieve, the greater the enemy will try to pull you back and pull you down from that. I'm glad that you wrote the letter. I'm glad that you yelled at me when you yelled at me. Because it was like, and I told a friend of mine, I said, you know, she yelled at me about something that happened 25 years ago. Well, why would she hold that in? You know, And so they were saying, maybe she just didn't know how to express it then.
Yeah.
So I know you are listening to this episode on YouTube, but there are so many podcasters that are listening on Apple and Spotify. And so what I want you to do is make sure you go over there and write a really good review. I want to hear, what are you getting out of these episodes? We read them, we see them, we comment. So make sure you go over to Apple and Spotify and leave a review for us so that we can be able to hear your heart and where you are. Now, let's get back to the episode.
I mean, because I think that's the thing when you're dealing with daddy's trauma, it, like I said, it becomes so much bigger than you, in your mind. You feel like it's a mountain that you don't even know how to tackle. You don't know how to start even climbing that mountain. So it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But I knew that being on this journey of healing, that you have to tackle those big mountains, even though you don't know how you're going to start climbing, even though you don't know how you're going to get over it, even though you don't know how to address it. And so for me, you know, getting on that plane and coming to Chicago and, you know, writing that letter, it was like me taking this stick and start climbing this big mountain that in my mind for, like you said, 25 years has become a huge part of my life. But what happens when you actually finally climb up that mountain and get to the peak of the real issue of the trauma? And I feel like for me, being able to sit down, you know, with you as you pick me up from the airport and us to talking about the letter and you telling me about suicide and you telling me how, you know, you felt like drugs just would have been an easier way of doing it because you were afraid of, you know, doing it yourself. And then even having you watch the podcast and the episode with myself was such a monumental, beautiful experience that I don't think I could ever get that back. You know, like, I don't even, that's something that I want most women to experience when you're dealing with trauma, because it's like when you get to the peak of that mountain and you're able to see what's beyond in the atmosphere and the horizon beyond what you thought, because all you saw climbing up was this big ass mountain of trauma, drugs, eviction, pain, abandonment, rejection. That's all you see. But it's like when you get to that peak and you start seeing all the other different things, you start seeing other people's perspectives. Now, you know how you know it's hard to climb up the mountain, but then when you climb down the mountain, it's a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, okay, I could climb down this mountain a lot easier because I know what I'm walking from behind. And for me, that was just such a beautiful experience to know that I could conquer that trauma within my own self. And you weren't afraid to be transparent and open and honest. Because many people, that's difficult when you got to bring up other people's shit, you know, and they don't want to face it themselves, or they don't want to say, oh, no, like, you know how many women will probably want to address something with their father, and their father would be like, that didn't happen. I didn't do that.
Yeah, it happened. I did it.
You know what I'm saying?
But see, I did it not because of you all.
Right.
But because of me.
Yeah.
It was because, I'm not even going to say because I wanted to, but when I got in the midst of it, it was like, okay, maybe this is your way out.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that it affected you all.
But that, dealing with that, and like I said, with healing and everything, and me, when I went through therapy and even dealing with my children's father, that is what helped me look at you as a man and not as a father. Mm-hmm. And you explaining that to me, because me and you had our conversations also without Ariel. And me understand that about you, it helped me look at you as a man to say, you know what? And then even living in the building of my grandparents with my aunt and all this other stuff, it helped me understand a lot of stuff with grandma and granddaddy and, you know, and stuff like that, and what they were doing for, doing everything for and stuff like that. And it was like, you know what, it helped me see and deal, because a lot of people, their daddies are not in their life. And when their daddy do come, it's like, oh, I can't forgive you because you weren't there. And that's why I told you before, like, I forgive you, and forgiveness is not for you. Forgiveness is for myself, you know, because you have to forgive yourself at the end of the day. So when it came to living in that building and understanding things and seeing things and hearing stories, even with your siblings and stuff like that, it helped me look at you as a man, not just my father. It helped me look at my aunt as a woman and not my aunt. You get what I'm saying? Right. And stuff like that. And helped me look at granddaddy and the love for his children and his grandchildren, and how even during his last days, no, he couldn't say my name, but when I walk in the room, he smiled. Right. You know, even Genesis, no, he couldn't say her name, but he smiled because he's seen his grandbabies and stuff like that. And to me, that just opened my eyes to a lot of ways where it's like, okay, they're men. And even when grandma passed and I seen him cry and he was like, my girlfriend's gone, you know, and stuff like that, because it was like, you know, it helped me look at the man of everything. And that's where I am able to see you not only as my father, but the man, but then also understand the protector, the provider, the aspect of a father and stuff like that. So now even your strength comes up where if I was to get married or a man come along, where now I'm not going to say I will hold him to that standard, but now I have an example of a man, the strength, the father, the protector, the provider, you know, where it's like, and maybe it could be a little bit spoiled because me, Olive Garden was like a McDonald's. So you need to step up your game. You know what I'm saying? So,
I mean, and that's the thing I think, you know, I tell people all the time, you have to learn how to, you know, love the father, but forgive the man.
Yes.
And I think that that's what dealing with, you know, daddy trauma with you and being able to sit down and have that conversation helped me be able to understand even more of, not that I held a lack of forgiveness, but it made me be able to forgive the man even the more and still love the father. And the one thing I will say is that, you know, when you're dealing with daddy's trauma, I had to climb that mountain by myself. I couldn't expect for you to climb that mountain with me. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, living in granddaddy's building and your father's building and you seeing what you had to see to help you deal or heal with daddy's trauma, that was your experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what I was trying to say on the first season. The way that you deal with it is not the way that I deal with it. Mm-hmm. And just because I don't know what that experience was like for you, you don't know what that experience was like for me to be able to sit there and watch you watch that podcast and have tears come down your face. And that was the healing that I needed for me. And this is when I say all the time to you, we have the same dad, but we have different experiences with the man. And you have to know that as a mother, even watching or with your children, they may have the same dad, but they have different experiences. And what God knows that I need to heal and the experiences that I need to have with him to be able to heal and to grow from my pain or my trauma, God knows what I need. Mm-hmm. Just like he knew that you got to stay in that building with your grandfather and seeing all this different stuff. He knew exactly what you need. And this is why you can't compare any of that. But I will say, thank God that both of us in our own way and right is able to climb our own mountain and take up our own steps and to be able to do what we need to do to be able to address some of those things. And so I'm just glad that I didn't get to the peak of that mountain and you say, baby, nothing that you said happened, and that you were in denial, and that you were, you know, a lack of forgiveness, or you were making excuses for your choices. You didn't do any of that.
I'm not supposed to, because they were my choices. This was me. This was me. This is what I chose to do at the time it is, because there were things it is that I was dealing with that you still don't know. Yeah. And this is not the podcast to discuss it.
No, but I think that's the beauty. Right. Of why I'm saying that, because everyone's story is not going to be our story. Right. Mm-hmm. Many women are going to try to address daddy trauma or daddy issues, and you're not going to get the outcomes that you desire. They may not accept truth. They may not sit down and say, let me accept my issues that I have, that I inflicted upon you, or you had some level of pain. They may be in denial, but that does not mean that you don't have to climb your own mountain and do what it is that you need to do to be able to heal. And so I just want to say that for any woman who's going on that journey, or you're addressing some of the pain or the daddy issues, daddy trauma that has caused you, let this be a testament that even if your dad never said, those were my issues,
or I'm sorry,
yeah, take what he's saying and accept it. Because you may never hear it from your father, but the reality is that's what a healed soul does. A healed soul says, those were my issues, and I am sorry, and I didn't know that I caused that much pain, and I didn't know that I'd be able to hurt you. And sometimes we think that it does feel good to hear from your own father, But just know that you're doing the work. And I think that you being able to speak for what many fathers can't say or what many fathers are saying speaks volumes. And I want women to be able to accept that for yourself, because everyone has to have their own free will of choice in how they heal, how they grow, and how they accept things. My father taking accountability for his actions felt like a weight lifted off your shoulders, because you don't really know what your parents know. And some people are not free to speak their truth and to accept the pain that they have caused. And I think for me, just being able to have that open dialogue without trying to water it down or to sugarcoat it, it was just a relief to know that, hey, I'm not crazy. What I feel is true. What happened is true. And that we're now on the same page.
If I can say one thing to the fathers out there, if you women show this to your father, fathers, you need to talk to your daughters. Because to be a father of a daughter is something special. You have what they need in order to succeed. It's nice to have sons. Oh, my boy, my boy. But these girls are special. And they hold emotions and they look to you to help them heal.
Yeah.
And that's what they need. Yeah. They look to you.
Well, I thank you guys for watching this podcast. I pray you got a lot out of it and continue to stay connected with us on this Healing from My Soul movement and journey. And we can't wait to bring you another powerful episode.